everyone, it's Taylor here. Today we're going to be creating this cute interactive card where the hidden sentiment pulls out as the mouse travels along the grass. I'll be using the cute Max and Millie set, specifically the mouse pushing the cheese cart, along with the coordinating dies. I'll also be using the Just My Type, the small pull tab from the set, along with the coordinating die to cut that out. For the dies, I'll be using the Stitched Cloud Duo and the Build-A-Scene Grassy Hills, along with one that I forgot to show, On the Right Track Basics. I'll be using the Cable Knit Embossing folder and the Cloud pattern from the Build-A-Scene paper pack. In order to create the interactive slider element, we will need the foam sticky circles and On the Right Track discs, along with foam sticky strips to allow it to pop up and that element to move. I'll also be using the Peapod ink with my matching blending brush and Oreo for the image stamping, along with lots of Copic markers to color the images. We're going to start by stamping the cute little mouse onto Sugar Cube cardstock using the Misty and Oreo ink. Our Oreo ink is Copic compatible and it's a great option for coloring with any of your alcohol-based markers. Since the interactive element takes a little bit of extra time, I figured I might as well make 2 of these while I'm at it. So you're going to see me do everything double. I've stamped 2 images, I'll be coloring both of them, and on down the line as I complete each step I will be doing it twice. I always start with the lighter shade of the combination for my Copic coloring, and I lay down a nice base of color with that lighter shade. Then I go in with the darker shade and I add my shadows using small flicking motions from the outside of the image in towards the center. And then I go back with the lighter shade to draw those 2 colors together. Copic coloring is where I'm most comfortable, but these images could be colored easily with colored pencils and Gamsol or even watercolor. I'm taking my small Sidekick machine and die cutting the 2 images with the coordinating dies. They'll need to be die cut in order to move them across the project. Next, I have a piece of 6x6 pattern paper, and I've cut that down to 2 pieces, each measuring 5 1/4 by 3. I'm adhering those to a 4 by 5 1/4 piece of Sugar Cube cardstock, leaving a space at the bottom where we can die cut our slider track. I'm using the On the Right Track Basics set, and the straight track from that set fits just perfectly across that opening. Next, we're going to build the slider element using our On the Right Track discs. Each card requires 4 discs, and it doesn't matter which colors you choose. You're going to take 4 sticky circles and place one down in the center of each of 4 of the discs. So you have 4 discs with popped circles in the center. You're going to place those within the track so that you can see the foam dot through the track. Take off the backing paper and place one of the remaining discs over the top, adhering those together to create 2 slider elements within each track. You can see here that they should move back and forth just perfectly along that track when you're finished. I saved one of the pieces that fell out from the track when I die cut that into the Sugar Cube cardstock, and I'm going to use those to build the tabs that will adhere the mouse and cart onto. I need to create 4 pieces from this one long piece, so I'm folding them in half and cutting, and then folding in half again and cutting until you have 4 equal pieces from this one long strip. You can see I'm placing them on top of the discs, and I will do that with a glue dot, just adhering those down to each of the strips. I don't have any of those smaller glue dots. They would have been a little bit more helpful, so I ended up just cutting my glue dots in half and then placing down those tabs onto the discs. Now it is going to be helpful to make sure you adhere your tabs at an equal height. So as you're placing them down, I just adhered the bottom of the tab with the edge of the die cut slider area, just to make sure that they're both at equal height and our image is not lopsided as it travels across the page. Now I'm taking and putting some adhesive onto the top of those tabs on each of the projects, and then that's what we're going to adhere our mouse and cart to. So we'll take the image and place it towards the top of the tabs. I've moved the one slider all the way over to the right side of that opening and adhered that first, and then you can move the second one into place and press it down. And you can see it just moves perfectly within that opening. Next, we're going to create the pull tab that will help that mouse and cart move across the page. I've cut down a piece that's much longer than what I need. It's 1/2 inch by about 8 inches long. I need to adhere this strip to the back of the discs, so I'm placing one glue dot on each of the discs, and then I will take that strip and adhere it over the top. Now you can see when I flip the project over and pull on that tab, it's going to allow the mouse to travel across the page on the element that we created. I'll do the same thing on the second project, again just using those glue dots, pushing it all the way over towards the right side of the card and then adhering that strip down. And I always double check that the mechanism is working before moving on to the next step. Next, I've cut 2 pieces of pea pod cardstock and I measured it to fit right below the wheel and the mouse's feet, so it looks just like he's traveling along the grass. I'm going to emboss those with the cable knit embossing folder that resembles grass, and then I'll use my pea pod blender brush and ink to draw out that grassy pattern. Now we need to adhere those grassy pieces to hide the interactive element behind it. I'm placing down 1/16 inch foam tape onto a leftover sheet of address labels. If you place your foam tape onto the waxy side of an address label sheet, you can use your scissors to cut it without getting any gummy residue onto your scissors. It's one of my favorite tricks. We're going to place those strips of adhesive at the bottom of the slider mechanism, making sure that it does not touch the discs at all, and along each of the sides. You want to make sure not to put any of that adhesive at the top of the slider element, because then our mouse will not travel back and forth. You can peel the backing paper off next and then place your grassy piece over the top. And you can see that the mouse travels just perfectly along that grassy area that we've created. Do the same on the second card and this step is finished. So next I've decided I'm going to add the sentiment before I get too much farther into my project. I am adding the Keep Pushing On sentiment towards the top left of the cloudy background, and I'm stamping that with the Oreo ink. I'll do the same on both cards and then move on to my next step, which is adding adhesive to the back of the card. Now this time I did use the thicker adhesive. These are our foam sticky strips and they are 1/8 inch thick, and you need that extra space for that element to move on the back of the project. So I'm placing down all the way around the outside those adhesive strips and one in the center just to keep it from bowing in the middle. I'm going to do that on both cards and then move on to finishing the front of the project before I adhere these to card bases. I did another double check before moving on just to make sure that pull tab was still functioning. Next, I've cut 2 pieces from our Build-A-Scene Grassy Hills using Granny Smith cardstock, and I'm blending those with the pea pod cardstock and adhering them toward the bottom of what we did previously with the cable knit embossed grass. Once those are adhered, I am going to add the clouds that I die cut from Stitch Cloud Duo using foam squares on the back. Just make sure as you're placing your clouds that they don't interfere with the mouse moving across the card front. Next, I'm going to create the pull tab using the small pull sentiment from the You're My Type stamp set. I'm inking that with Oreo ink and again repeating the step twice so that I will have 2 of these pull tabs, one for each of my projects. I'm lining that up using the coordinating die, and this will actually create a folded pull tab for the project. Before I adhere the pull tab, I'm going to cut off the excess amount from the strip that we created earlier, just pushing that strip all the way in and then leaving a little bit of excess to adhere that pull tab to. I'll do the same for the second project and we should have 2 fully functioning pull tabs. The next step will be to add that I'm here for you sentiment that will be hidden until the recipient pulls that tab out. The last step will be to add these to card bases, and we've already put our foam adhesive on the back of each of the cards, so now all we need to do is peel that backing and then center them on the folded card base. You want to make sure your pull tab does not get adhered down with the foam tape, so just keep it within that opening that you created with the foam tape and you should be good to go. Once these are adhered to the card bases, you can see we have fully functioning interactive elements. These were super fun to make and will be even more fun to give. I hope you learned something new with today's tutorial. You can find all of these products at the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com.